Welcome to Tea, Toast, and Theology, all things nourishing, presented by The Table. Find us on the web at the-table.church.
All right. So about the king and the wisdom, one thing that you learn about Solomon, especially living in an Islamic country, is that he had all these wives, hundreds of wives. And I was like, how was he wise? Right? One wife, right? Yeah, just one wife. Uh, right. So, but he is known as this wisdom person, and he is the one who, the reason why he had all these wives is because he actually uh, wanted to accept all these different cultures around him. And so, as sort of a, uh, way to make connection with another culture, another people, he married into them, right? And that's how he made all these different connections. And his rule kept on growing, and it was, you know, but here's an instance where he's a very small child at this point, and he says that I'm only a little child, right? And he's like, what do I do? And the sign of his wisdom is that he understands that if I just ask something for myself, that is it. There is a finite limit to whatever it will be for myself. But if I ask something that benefits my entire community, then there is no limit to it. You see what I'm saying? Because then everyone is blessed, and that blessing keeps on growing, hopefully, because then everyone is asking for the same blessing. And then the blessing just goes throughout the world, and everyone gets to be blessed. And so it's a great thing. If I ask just something for myself, I will get it and it will stay to me. But if I ask for something that will help the entire community, guess what? That blessing will start flowing out into the world, and it will bless everyone. And that is really wise. Last night, we tried to discern what wisdom is. And I thought we had a very interesting conversation because it never reached a conclusion. We spent the whole time, and we ran out of time for even worship music, but we spent the whole time trying to figure out what was wisdom, and there was no conclusion. But there were some really good points raised. So, for those of you who were there last night, if you would like to share what those points were, or at least what was it that you said, because that is something you would remember.
It was a really long conversation. There was so much that was shared. Um, one of the things I remember is someone saying it could look different in different situations, different circumstances. So wisdom could, be situation dependent. Um, I shared that I felt like wisdom for me is recognizing that I could be satisfied with just having, like what you just said, like having my own blessings in my life for my family, and be satisfied with that and stop there. But I recognize that I'm not going to be at peace until everyone has what they need. And I was talking about dogs too. Um, I was having food, not being starved, having a home. It just really, really concerns me. So um, I think we also talked about putting on on the airplane when the flight attendant tells you that if the air mask comes down, you should put it on yourself first before tending to other folks. And the thought behind that is, well, how could you be of use to someone if you're dead? If you're not oxygenated, if you're passed out, if you're not getting what you need to be at your best self, how can you help somebody else? So we talked about that. And we kept bringing it back to God and Jesus and theology. And you questioned us on that one. You're like, why do we do this? Like, is it just because the reading came from the Bible that we all like find that we somehow sneakily come back to God and Jesus? And is that always like the best thing? Is that always the like, I don't know, is that what it should be or what it is? It was a lot of stuff. That's what I remember. Anybody else
Thank you.
who was there?
I kind of remember from Psalm 111, the last line, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. We touched on that. And, it's not fear like, oh, I'm afraid he's going to smite me, but in awe and reverence of him. And to me, that's, when you let him in and you pray for discernment. And I think the closer you get to him, the more you're in your word. You listen to the Proverbs. We talked about all the Proverbs last night that, hopefully it sinks in.
I think we also brought the book of Esther and the book of Proverbs, two books in the Bible that most very biblical enthusiasts who like to quote scripture for guidance, right, for their own life, they probably haven't read those stories much, or those books. And both of them don't talk about God at all. The book of Proverbs doesn't mention God because the book of Proverbs is the story of wisdom that the Jews have and compile with common sense, reaching out to others, helping each other out. And if you read Proverbs, some of the statements in Proverbs, you can apply them to yourself and to your life. And then you bring God into that when you're respecting Him. Not that God is there, but God is waiting for you to gain that wisdom of Proverbs to bring fruit into your life. So we talked about that too, that's getting away from the theology that we always bring into play when we think about, our readings for today. But sometimes the reading in the Bible doesn't really talk about that. But it's in the Bible because God wants us to.
Basically be quiet and listen. Sounds just like me. So I mean, I've learned that over the years from a few things, being in sales and you can't be so aggressive. You got to sit and listen to what people want and not what you think they need, and just and just always, like, it comes back to compassion with me because now I listen more. People are sometimes trying to say things that they won't say to other people, and just be quiet, listen. You can help them with maybe just a few words, but by talking, like John just talked about all that. And the last 8 years for me have been rough. And I think to myself, it's made me stronger for sure, and it also has made me listen way more because people are going through things that maybe they've never really said to me before. And it took a lot, but people think I'm so joyous, and I guess I am, but I feel the joy and listening and then reacting compassionately. I got a lot out of last night. My chipmunk outside doesn't get food.
Well, you gotta help. Then how can you eat?
So let me share a quick aside about dogs. There was something about a dog that needed a home, and I was right next to Bob, Julie's Bob, and I showed it to Bob, and Bob immediately said, "Don't show it to Julie." Otherwise, that dog will end up in our house. So, so, uh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. And what I had to contribute to that conversation was, in the end, the whole conversation that we were developing was, what is wisdom? And we were coming at it, and each time someone said, "Oh, this is wisdom," someone else said, "Oh, but how about that?" Right? There was always a different perspective that came into play that questioned the entirety, the question, the thought, not that thought itself was wrong, but that thought may have limitations, that it may not be applicable to everything, and we cannot hold it up like in Islamic culture they say as hadith, right? The Prophet said this, and therefore it's said and done, and there is no other interpretation, when actually that itself is an interpretation, right? Right? So that is what we were running into. That's what led it into being such a long conversation, because as soon as we would say something, and in that process, our quest was to find something that was wisdom, which was above everything else, right? And that's where someone said, "Oh, it's probably situational," right? And so what I had to offer was that maybe it is not situational. Maybe wisdom is to account for everything, not just one little thing, right? And maybe it is that, for that reason, it is an ongoing process, because there can never be a moment in time when you have actually evaluated and reflected on everything, right? Because there is also so much else out there. Like I mentioned, Para pulling out an app and in my backyard, and we discovered there were 3 or 4 different birds that were there, and I would hear them every day, of course, but I never knew what these birds were, and what their song patterns were, because I was never attentive to that. Neither did I have that app, right? But the point is that there is so much to life, and wisdom is to know that there is so much to life, and that life is really, really important, right? And the author of that life is God. Yes, at the end, we do end up in that territory of theology, but like even saying that God wants us to pay attention to Proverbs and ask, well, yeah, in other words, we do end up with God, right? but but there is a lot that we have to account for, and that is what wisdom. And what I enjoy being here Sunday after Sunday is that is what this community exudes. That as soon as that thought came of anger, as soon as we spoke of joy, you said, "Oh, come on, let's not be too, rushy on this. Let's slow down, because pain and hurt is true and real, right? We cannot dismiss that. We cannot just be, "I got the joy, 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 joy," No, there is something else also. So true wisdom is to actually account for everything, including joy, hurt and joy, pain and everything else. That is part, and that is why wisdom, I believe, for instance, Solomon was considered that person, because first of all, he acknowledged that I'm just a little child. Listen, I don't have those years of experience of knowing everything, right? And I'm not even going to claim that. I know that I have a very small perspective. I don't have the entirety, right? So let's begin there. And now I have been thrown in the midst of all these people that I'm supposed to govern. Oh my God. Can you imagine that? The amount of responsibility on your shoulders to govern. And he says, "You've called me, I'll do it." Right? But I don't know how to do it, You are the one who is going to like, give me something that will help me do that. And it's really beautiful where it ends is, listen, I'll give you wisdom, but then I'll also give you everything else that everyone else asks for. Right? And here's the fun part, that when we place ourselves in that space of wisdom, everything else actually follows. We lose all those things when we don't follow the idea of wisdom. Right? Have you heard that phrase, penny wise, pound foolish? We become so focused on this one thing that we lose that bigger perspective. And when we lose that bigger perspective, that one thing that we are trying to do doesn't work in the end, because we lost the bigger picture, right? I do want to share something personal today because I'm dressed for it, right? My cousin called me, and first of all, my Facebook post was I was in front of a judge. And he said, now what did you do? Right? So, so I explained to him, no, it wasn't, it's a good thing, right? And then he said, well, what took you so long? Right? Because the process is that you are a permanent lawful resident for 5 years, right? And there are certain things you have to make sure you are doing during those 5 years. And so you've done those 5 years of things, and then you can apply for it. And most people do, right? According to the stats, most people get their naturalization within 5.6 years of their becoming a lawful resident. It took me, I don't know, 15 years, right? So why? And I want to share with you why, because Friday was beautiful. And I said to my cousin, listen, I could have done it. I could have, right? But that would have just been for me. That would have just been for me. I would have gone there and it was actually seen by people who were there. Because most people who were there were 2 people, or maybe 2 people and children, 4 people, or maybe a friend. And we showed up with 16 people, right? And I said, if I had done it before, I was doing it for myself. The thing is, I have learned in life that you may have to leave something behind, but when you go and join something, you need to be very sure if you're going to join it, why you're joining it. You shouldn't just start anything without any reflection, without considering everything that it actually means. And when you are saying you're going to become a citizen of a nation, guess what? Nation is important. You're not just gaining something for yourself. You're becoming a part of a community. Like Solomon, you are a part of a community. And you need to first understand that community really well, right? And that community needs to understand you. And that community needs to be able to offer its welcome to you. And what was so beautiful on Friday is that there was a visible community there to say that we welcome you as a part of us. The judge noticed it and made a comment on it. The woman who was outside registering votes noticed it and said, wow. And she said, I do this all the time. I see all these people come by themselves and go through this, but this is what gives meaning to this ceremony. And I want to thank you all for helping me make that decision, because now I was sure that I was actually wanted in this nation, right? And so that is, and then I started hearing Julie's mom was naturalized. Did you ever think of that? Right? Lisa Egan was naturalized. Did you ever think of that? Right? And then all these people are coming out of the woodwork saying, I was naturalized. No, no, I thought, well, and this is the pain, and this is why I love this community. The pain is, my friends, that I looked around and I saw a Swedish couple, I saw some Germans. Said, well, the Russians may have a little problem, but the German and the Swedish, if they walk out of this room and they have a thick accent, no one will ever question whether they were ever naturalized or not. No one will even question that. They'll look at them and they'll just assume that they were born here because their accent is such, right? I remember one of the reasons why I love Para so much is because she would put up a lot with me. You know, so we were together in the divinity. She said, yes, right. Uh, so we were in the divinity school, and I remember there was this thing about, oh, this African American or this Korean American, because there were quite a few Koreans who were in the Methodist Church preparing to be ministers, and so it started getting to me. And I said to Para, I don't know if she would remember this dialogue or not, but I do. I said to her, I said, Para, people have to stop saying African American and Asian American or Indian American or whatever, right? Because those are like three very known categories, right? But people have to stop saying that, because that's American, right? This whole hyphenated thing. And I said, Para, you have to stop also, because if you don't, I'll start calling you Euro-American. That's how she puts up with it, right? So you see what I'm saying? We make these assumptions, and that is the pain. That is the pain. That we love hyphenations. We love to put people in boxes. This is an evangelical Christian. This is a liturgical Christian. This is those. Really? For everything, we try to put people in boxes. And that is painful, my friends. It's not African American. It's American. It's not Asian American. It's American. And what I loved on Friday was that the person who was taking the oath, the judge, he read something, he spoke, and he said, my parents came here. And I don't know what his background was. I'm making an assumption it was South Asian, but I don't know, right? And the woman who was taking all the papers, she seemed to have an accent, so I don't know what her background was, right? And then when everybody starts saying, oh, my mom, right? And so. Isn't that wonderful? And it is also painful. And that is why I love this community, because this community says, no, we don't see difference. And we don't like to talk about people as this kind of people or that kind of people or in this box or that box, right? We know people only as what Dennis said this morning, unknowing that I'll use it. We are all children of God. We're all children of God. It doesn't matter if that child is 90 years old or 9 months old. It doesn't matter. And that has been one of our struggles here too, right? We want children of all ages to be a part of everything because we don't want to put people in boxes, because relegating someone in a box is painful. And here's the beautiful thing. This experience here is an amazing experience because there are not that many societies and nations in the world that are built on the experience of people coming from everywhere and being one. And there are not that many communities like this that can say that when you are here, and even before you get here, we don't really care about the hyphenations because we love you as a child of God. And I will close this, that when we reach that level of wisdom, even when there is great pain, because this is not a done deal, right? This is not an experiment that is perfect, by the way. And by the way, the judge said that, right? This is not an experiment. Democracy is still something we work at, right? This is not something that we can say, oh, it's perfect, because it's not, right? There is pain still. There is pain still. And my friends, the beauty is that we are here together with the grace of God to address that pain and to move towards a more beautiful world filled with that wisdom that prioritizes life, that chooses joy, and in so doing affirms the very essence of who God is. Amen.
Thank you for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe.